Welcome to the Wayne Bennett Podcast, celebrating West Virginia's people, places, and the culture of Southern Appalachia. Now here's your host, Wayne Bennett.
Welcome to Wayne Bennett's Podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Bennett, and this is episode 149. It's September the 17th, 2024. It's a rainy morning, and we need rain in this area. Haven't had any in about 3 months. Today, our guest is running for Congress, District 1. That position is currently held by Carol Miller, who is a Republican, and also running in that race is Chris Reed, Democrat. But our guest is Wes Holden, who is running as an independent. Wes, glad to have you.
Well, Wayne, I'm glad to be here with you. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Now, you worked for Jay Rockefeller for many years, and we'll get into that work a little later. But how's Jay doing?
Well, he's doing pretty good. He's at home. And if you remember, well, time goes by. It's been, how long? Maybe 10 years since he left office. So thinking about this, maybe 25 years ago, he was up at WVU walking with the president of Neil Buckalow. And because Jay's so tall and people are much shorter than him, he was walking with his normal stance, walking with his head bent down. And there was a little low spot in the sidewalk. He tripped and fell and partially tore his Achilles tendon. So he had to recuperate from that and got it fixed. And then maybe 5 years later, he was talking to the new president, and somehow he tripped again and tore his Achilles tendon off. And so then they tried to get a cadaver, it wouldn't take, and then tried some other medical procedures, didn't take. And the jump ahead, before Rockefeller left office, and I think that's another reason why he didn't want to run, is because the pain that he was having in his legs. And, several times he said, "Wes, I can't stand it. It's like bone on bone." And being such a tall man and trying to get in a little airplane, fold himself up, the pain was excruciating, or trying to get into an automobile, a smaller automobile, the pain was excruciating. And that was one of the main reasons why he didn't want to run for office again, because of campaigning throughout the state. He just couldn't take it.
I didn't know that. Were you born in West Virginia?
Yes, I was born in West Virginia. I was born in Charleston. I'm a 10th generation West Virginian. And this coming weekend, I'm going to go to Union. And that is in Monroe County. And I remember when I was a young boy, my grandma told me that her people came from Monroe County at Union. And so several months ago, they had a farmers parade in Union.
I've been there.
And so I thought, well, I need to take a look at that, at my genealogy. I love genealogy. And I saw some of my forefathers that lived there in Union. So when I was visiting Union during the farmers parade, I asked, do you know these family names? They go, yeah, they're living just down the street. So I, at the end of the day, made a beeline. And here they were distant cousins from the 1770s. And so, again, it just makes you feel glad and happy to meet someone you're connected to that you never knew that you had. So, and then I'm related to Andrew Lewis, because some of my people moved up into Greenbrier County, and then everyone's migrating as generations went on and came up to Kanawha County.
Now, how was your childhood? Was there a mom and dad?
Oh yes, of course, mom and dad. And my dad was in the military. He was in the Army, and it was during the Korean War that they met. He was stationed at Fort Lee, and he's not from West Virginia, but my mom's family is. And he asked one of his Army buddies, how young men are, at that time, a little lonely, looking for companionship. So he had a buddy that lived from West Virginia out near Charleston. So he said, "Oh, I can hook you up with some girls. The girl I'm dating has all kinds of cousins." So that's how my mom and dad got connected. So my dad, he was a military lifer. And so when I was growing up, I lived at this military base, that military base. I lived in Japan. And when we retired, we lived in Dover, Delaware. But it was a point every summer and then during holidays, we'd make the trip back to West Virginia to be with my grandparents and my relatives. And
now, you actually graduated from Highland
View Academy. It's in Hagerstown, Maryland. It's a church school. Uh-huh. So I grew up in parochial schools most of my life.
Uh-huh. And I heard the story that within 2 days after your graduation, you enlisted into the Army.
Let me tell you a little story about that. The Vietnam War. I was in, it was every day in the news, and it was in magazines. And I initially thought I would like to be a fighter pilot. And then I was reading about these missiles that the North Vietnamese would send up, shoot our pilots down. And at that time, I'd read in Time, Newsweek, or whatever, that there was no countermeasures for that. And I thought, no, I don't want to do that. And so, but during study hall one day, one of my buddies, he said, "What are you going to tell your kids when they say, 'Daddy, what did you do during the war?'" And I got to thinking, I grew up on stories of the Korean War and World War II. I thought, I got to do something. So I got in touch with an Army recruiter. So the day after high school, I was in the Army basic training at Fort Dix in the middle of the summer.
What year was this?
Oh, that was 1972.
Okay.
So the Vietnam War was still going on. And so for my AIT, I was sent to Fort Gordon, Georgia. When you're getting ready to graduate, you look at the companies ahead of you that's ready, the advanced AIT companies graduating ahead of you. Those two companies got sent to Vietnam. And then when my company came to graduate, most of us, they sent us to Germany. So I didn't go to Vietnam. So
now, I heard an interesting story also about while you were in Germany, you helped save 9 children.
Well, not that many. It was 6 children.
6 children.
And I was a military policeman. Where I was at, we only had a barracks. We didn't have a mess hall, so we ate on the economy. And I learned German because I was interested in assimilating, wanting to learn more about the local people. So I worked with the German police, and I was assigned to ride in a German police car. And then if there would be an American-German incident or a traffic accident or whatever, there would be an American there as well. So one New Year's Eve, we were at our police station. We got a call, there's a house on fire. So we all jumped in our squad cars, went to the house, and the precinct captain, he was already there. And so I was standing there talking to him. And it was a 2-story house, and smoke was pouring out, and everyone was waiting for the fire department to come. And he casually mentions to me that there's kids upstairs in that house. And I just couldn't fathom it. Well, why isn't someone trying to get the kids out? And I guess the fire was more on the first floor. So I took off and ran around the house looking for a ladder. I found a ladder and put it up against the second-story window. And they had a grating, that was on keep, I guess, the kids or whatever from getting in or out of the house. So I was able to get the grating off. And so I rescued 6 kids and 2 dogs. And they weren't they were overcome by smoke inhalation. You picked them up. They were like one of these dolls that you pick up. They were just lifeless and, just dragging along. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing about that, I mean, it's not really funny, but it's sort of interesting. So the next day in the German newspaper, they have a picture of me coming down the ladder carrying a kid who's, just collapsed in my arms. And the caption in the newspaper says, And the German fire department's coming up the ladder, and the caption in the newspaper said, "Look at the new fire equipment that our policemen have."
Oh, God.
And I thought, you know how that goes.
Now, did all the kids live?
Yeah, all the kids lived, and the newspaper also labeled me the hero of Omerstrasse.
Wow.
And so any place I would go, I'd be a celebrity.
Well, you got a distinguished heroism?
Yes, I did. It was a soldier's medal. It is the highest peacetime award for heroism in the United States Army. And if you want to know basically what it is, it's the same medal that John F. Kennedy got when he saved his fellow sailors when his PT boat 109 was sunk. Wow. And so it is a very, prestigious medal.
Now, there also, I read an article where you happened to be in England one time and you broke up a fight. You broke up a fight and Kojak style.
Yeah.
What was that?
I didn't know you knew about that. Yes. So I had several weeks leave coming to me. So I'd never been to England or Scotland before, and I thought I would go there. So went to York. It was York, England. So I checked into a guest house and put my stuff in my room. I come out and I hear these women hollering, "Oh, there's a fight downstairs. Fight, fight." And, I didn't think anything about it. And so one of the women, "Go break it up." I said, "It's a fight between two boys, probably fighting over a girl. Why do I want to get involved?" And they said, "No, one's an old man getting beat up." So then I went down there and I put a stop to it. And I took care of the bad guy. And come to find out, the old man that was getting beat up, he was an owner of a restaurant, and it was his chef that was beating him up. So there's an interesting story, about that.
Of the kids that you saved, did you ever have any contact with any of those kids later?
No, I didn't. You know how time goes by, and sometimes I would like to, but I have no idea or way of, getting in touch with that family.
Yeah. Now, when you got out of the service, you came back to West Virginia and you went to West Virginia State University. Yes. And you actually entered criminal justice.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Now, and then you went to COGS, West Virginia College of Graduate Studies.
Yes.
What did you study there?
Got Master's of Public Administration.
Oh, okay. Now, I went to College of Graduate Studies back in the day, and the on-campus activities and the work, it wasn't easy.
No, it wasn't. Those guys were tough. I had Dr. Cupp. He was a good guy. And Dr. Garnett, he, as a matter of fact, worked for Nelson Rockefeller. So I thought that was interesting.
Wow. Now, you got married somewhere.
Yes, I did. And I married a girl from just north of Charleston, and we had two beautiful daughters. And we moved to Sissonville not long after we got married. And so we've been there ever since.
Now, were you the Wes Holden that was in the Mary Engels story?
Yes. Oh, you know everything about me. Yes, and anyway.
You were an Indian?
I was the Indian at the end of the trail. And so I, would go to powwows. So the people that were putting on the Mary Engels thing, they, were looking for a Native American, and so I had an outfit, and I have a little bit of Native American in me from my dad's side. So I thought, sure, they had, let's say, there was 4 groups that would get, talk about on the tour stop, and I was the guy at the end of the trail, and so I had my outfit, and I had my axe, and my bow, and my spear. And when they, the hikers would come along, I'd jump out and sort of threaten them. Like, what are you doing here? This is, Shawnee land. and sort of intimidate them. And because I was so rough with them, the people, I mean, they went back and, you fill out a little card asking, what did you like? Oh, we like the Indian guy the best. And so, but I really got into it. And what I thought was so funny, here I was paid to be an actor, and I would have done it for free. I had so much fun. Then, you talk about Native American culture and,
Did you ever
like
try any other acting afterwards?
No, I never did. I was also asked to be an actor in Putnam County. Another group of people wanted to do that. But I did that for several years in a row. So it was big fun.
That takes a lot of time. Now, how exactly did you get hooked up with Jay Rockefeller?
Well, I worked for him when he was governor, but not directly in his office. Well, first off, I was a Medicaid fraud investigator when I worked for the state. And I would investigate white-collar crime. And because I had a good success rate, the commissioner, Leon Ginsburg, he wanted someone in his client services unit to handle inquiries and also handle U.S. congressional inquiries and members of the legislature's inquiries and governor inquiries. And because of the work that I did for the governor's office when Rockefeller was governor, I got to know his staff quite well. And when he was elected, I had talked to a close friend of his and said, I would like to work for Jay, in the Senate, because I dealt with so many congressional inquiries. And I'd like to tell you a little story, if you don't mind. Many times when I'd receive a congressional inquiry, the staff would be, pleasant with me and, here it is, can you work on it and see what happens? And I won't mention what the congressional office called me. But one congressional office called me and said a friend of this congressional person that was in office lost her slate roof, and the member would like to have the roof replaced under the LEAP program. And so the roof was going to cost $40,000. And I said, I can't do that. So a week later, she calls me up and says, well, how's that problem coming along? I said, I can't do it. She said, if you don't do it, I'm going to get your job. And so I was very nervous and upset. I thought I did what was correct. And I walked down to the commissioner's office, and I was sort of his administrative assistant. And I told him, he said, Wes, don't worry about it. You did the right thing. We can't pay that money. And I always told myself, if I'm ever in a congressional office, I will never be mean or bully, another office to try to help a constituent or do whatever. And so when I started working for Senator Rockefeller, I made that a point. And what I would do, I was successful for many reasons. And unlike other congressional offices, they would just call whatever the congressional hotline and do whatever. But I learned to become friends with these staffers, and they would give me their private telephone number, and I would, call them on their private line, and, whatever the inquiry was. I just didn't, we submitted letters to federal offices, but there were many times when, something was exceptional, and I believed in that constituent, and whoever that constituent was needed extra help. And I would call and I'd say, look, you need to take a look at this. There was extenuating circumstances why this person needs to be approved. So they took care of me. And just to expound on that, my wife died of stage 4 lung cancer. So then a period of time went by, and so I started dating a girl from Beckley, and she was a suicide prevention coordinator at the VA Medical Center. So one day she asked me, what did you do for Senator Rockefeller? I said, I'm not going to tell you. And she said, why? I said, you think you'll stop dating me because of I'll tell you all the things that I did to help people, that you think I'm making it up and you don't want to have a thing to do with me. So, but as, we've been together, we've met people, they'd happen to, wherever we're at, and definitely campaigning, they would come up to me and say, I remember you. You helped me do this. You helped me do that. And even things that I don't, you forget. But what I did working for Senator Rockefeller, how much time do we have?
Well,
because I could tell you a story. But anyway, a person who worked for Jennings Randolph was working for the senator to get his last 6 months in so he could get his retirement. So there was an incident I was involved in. I was in the paper. And so this guy said, you need to save all these success stories and things that you did out of the ordinary. And so I would save these. And then over the years, I had a file cabinet drawer. I mean, it was a little more than 3 foot long, packed full of success stories that I did for Senator Rockefeller. And it wasn't just help someone get their black lung claim or, get this fixed or whatever. I helped people get medical or heart transplants, lung transplants. I would negotiate, but the point was this first case, and this is what I'd like for the listeners to understand. This person was losing his house. It was in the springtime, using his backyard, let me put it that way. And the barges would tie up to his riverbank property. And because it was such a wet year and the water was so high, the barges would tie up to the big trees. And because of the river, the trees would come out. And because of riverbank erosion, it got within 30 feet of his house. He went to Senator Byrd, Congressman Wise, and Governor Moore, and no one would help him. They say, sorry, but this is not a federal problem. This is not a state problem. We can't help you. So he came to me and he said, no one will help me. And I got to thinking, what if it was me? What if it was me? Who could I go to help me? And I thought, I'm it. So I could go into the big long story, but I got a bunch of volunteers together and got an emergency permit from the Corps of Engineers. We had rock put in and has filled it in his backyard, saved his home and saved his riverbank. And after that, anytime someone would come to me, I would, again, what if it was me? And since I was the director in charge of client services and then got to be the deputy state director, I would always make sure our staff treated people as if it was their problem. And with correspondence or inquiries, I had a deadline. You had to respond to that person within 3 days. And the senator agreed with that. And a week after Senator Rockefeller was elected and was in office, Senator Akaka from Hawaii was across the hall from him and told Senator Rockefeller this. So this first trip back to the state, the senator related this to me. And Senator Akaka told Senator Rockefeller, said, Jay, it doesn't make any difference what kind of legislation you pass. People won't remember, but people will remember what you did for them. Never forget that. So Senator Rockefeller impressed that upon me. And again, I remember I was collecting signatures, and this woman pointed her finger at me and said, I know who you are. And then, it started shaking. And she said, you helped me umpteen years ago, and said, your name and phone number is on my refrigerator, so I know who to call if I need help.
Well, some of the early newspapers, they referred to you as the chief deputy officer or some administrative liaison, some even Jay's right-hand man.
Yeah.
And so you didn't know exactly what you were going to get into when you went to work those days. But just curious, what kind of music did you listen to when you were?
Well, like any kid, and you got to remember, I went to church school, and yeah, we all like, rock and roll or whatever was going on. And, like that was frowned upon. I'd take a radio and put it in my dorm and the dean would catch me and, take away my radio. But I was on top of all the music. So I was, mostly into, rock music.
Now you, when you were working for Jay, you of course spent a lot of time in Washington. Your family, where were they?
Oh, no, they were still in Sissonville.
They were still there.
Yeah.
And so you were there during the Robert Byrd and the Tip O'Neill and
yes, all
and
that.
did you ever have any interaction with those guys?
Oh, Tip O'Neill, I did not because he was on the Congress side.
Yeah.
But Senator Byrd, I could tell you stories all day long about Senator Byrd. And, one of the neat things about Senator Byrd, that I'll just share this. When he was last elected, he was up in the Marriott Hotel, and there was a picture I was wanting him to autograph. It was he and I together, and I knew, as old as he was, and here he was in town. So I was up in the hotel room where he was having his little celebration. And so one of his staff members, he and I were the only ones left in the room, but Senator Byrd, he had some fiddle players up there and they were playing music and Senator Byrd's going do. And so I thought, well, Byrd told me, he said, look, I'll sign this picture later. He still wanted to listen to the fiddle music. So I went downstairs and some people of the press saw me. And they want to know when Senator Byrd's coming down to, do his announcement or acceptance speech. I said, look, I'm not a member of Senator Byrd's staff. I'm not going to speak for Senator Byrd.
Jay Rockefeller at one time was strongly considered a presidential candidate.
Oh, that is correct.
And that was around the time Bill Clinton.
Exactly. I can tell you stories about that too.
Would you have wanted him to?
Well, let me tell you, I think the year before, Senator Rockefeller just got finished with a Senate campaign. And so when, your boss is in a Senate campaign, constituents are more demanding at that time. So here I worked my butt off to make sure that no one could complain that Senator Rockefeller was laying down on the job. And then when Senator Rockefeller was thinking about running for president, I started getting phone calls from all across the country. You need to do this. I got a road problem. You need to do that. And I go, but they would sort of, like trying to intimidate you. And the talk about Senator's campaign or, thinking about being a president, I always thought it was Sharon who didn't want him to do it. And so, I was there at the big announcement. Then after the announcement, the family, we went upstairs to meet the family, just a few of us staff. And everyone was so relaxed and everything. And then a few years later, I was reading a book about Clinton running for office. And I can't think of his name. Who's the guy from Arkansas, bald-headed guy?
The one,
who I'm thinking of. I can't. Carville, James Carville.
Yeah,
James Carville.
Yeah.
So I was reading a book, and in the book, Carville comments on Jay calling him and called him twice and said, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. So after I read that, then I knew it was Jay's personal decision, because the kids and the family would have supported Jay if he would have run for president. And you have to remember at that time, Clinton was the dark horse. And I think Senator Rockefeller could have easily came out ahead. And possibly if Senator Rockefeller hadn't just gone through another re-election period, he would have been maybe more interested in running for president.
Now, the Rockefeller family, though, historically had been a Republican Party members, and he became a Democrat when he came to West Virginia?
While he switched, he came as a Vista worker. He went to the coal mine community of Emmons. And he was one, and I could tell you stories about what he tried to do to help the local people. And he had a little trailer next to the railroad tracks that he stayed in. Children's curiosity, I think, got the best of the community because, oh, here's a millionaire. And I don't know how it was when you were growing up, but I met a guy that was a millionaire. And so it was just like touching a chimney swift. If you touch the millionaire, you're going to get rich. You know how that goes. So the kids, he won the hearts of the kids, and his time was up as a Vista worker. But because he still cared about the local people and the kids were accepting him, he stayed there. Then he won the hearts of the families in Emmons. And he did a lot of things for that community. There are other people, and you got to remember, when Jay got married to Sharon out in Illinois, he personally paid for many of those family members to come to his wedding and, flew them in the airplane, put them up in hotels and everything. So years later, when I would go back there, when Rockefeller was senator, some of the older people would remember that.
Now he retired in 2014.
Technically, is the beginning of 15 when he left office.
Now you ran for office.
Yes, I did. I took care of my wife who had stage 4 lung cancer, and I was her hospice person. And she was on a breathing machine. So, it just goes back to the many times I helped miners with black lung claims. They'd come to the office and be on a respirator. And so after she passed away, members of the Democrat Party asked me if I'd run for office because I was well known. And I thought that I would. And so I ran for office, and I barely got beat. And the reason I got beat was a third-party candidate. And he really didn't do any campaigning or anything. And so he got something like 200 and some odd votes. And that was the amount that I lost by, was 200 and some votes. And you have to remember what was interesting. This was the year that Trump ran for president. And so I had a lot of supporters who were Trump supporters who all allowed me to put signs in their yard and voted for me.
A quote that I get from you that you say, sadly, these days, many folks know all kinds of details about the Kardashians or the favorite sports figure or movie or music idol, yet they're unable to identify their elected representative. Did that thinking make you become an independent?
Oh, that was part of it. That was part of it. And it is truly amazing, and it's sad that even last year when I was collecting signatures, they would want to know, well, what's your background? I said, I work for Senator Rockefeller. Who's that? I go, like Senator Byrd. Who's that? People don't know. And now when I'm campaigning, they say, who you running against? And I would tell them, well, who's that? And I said, she's been in that position for 6 years. And it is unfortunate that people accept things. They want to blame politicians for their problems, but they don't know who their politician is that's representing them, so they could go complain to them if there's an issue that needs to be handled.
That brings the topic of on your platform, transparency. Mm-hmm. And that's always seems to be, of course, the media complains about our governor now with lack of transparency. And what do you plan on doing to change that?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed, and it really breaks my heart, because when I worked for Senator Rockefeller, we would, well, let me back up. One of the things that I did for Senator Rockefeller, every so many months, I would do mobile office visits. I'd go to senior centers, I'd go to courthouses, and ask people, what kind of jobs Senator Rockefeller is doing. And we would advertise. So I would have lines of people waiting to see me. And it was our way. Instead of feeling that Washington was so remote, so far away, here was someone that had the senator's ear before them. And give me your complaint or tell me what you think, and I would let the senator know. And the senator would contact him back, and we'd work on the problem. Not every time, every problem a person's eligible for benefits or certain issues, not always solvable. But because of, contacts or whatever, if it was a road problem, it would get taken care of. So, and that's one way. But the point that I was wanting to make, unfortunately, it seems like our representatives do not hold town hall meetings. I would want to hold town hall meetings. Just recently, as a matter of fact, this past weekend, I was down in Bluefield, and I always heard this complaint that politicians only know us when it's election season. And so these people were saying, you come back and see us, don't forget us. And I said, if I am elected, I'll come to your house and we'll have coffee or have dinner together. But I feel because our current politicians are so out of touch that they don't have town hall meetings. I would like, when I'm in office, because I have 28 counties and your time is so limited, and I don't necessarily feel like I need to do it in the larger counties, but it's the rural areas of West Virginia that needs the most help. They need an economic shot in the arm. So and part of my campaign, I've been sitting down with medical center directors or different people, the Chamber of Commerce. What is your problem? I want to know about your problem now, not wait till I get in office and 6 months into office, I'm trying to learn what the problems are. I want to know what the problems are now so that I can start formulating a plan of what I will do when I am elected to office on day one.
Now, you're a veteran.
Yes, I'm a veteran.
You've reached out to the veterans and you want to change some of the policies or add to those particular programs. Anything in particular that you are interested in or with the veterans?
Well, let me back up. When I worked for Senator Rockefeller, where I handled a lot of veterans issues, and especially with the Iraq war winding down in Afghanistan, a lot of guys who joined, or women also joined, it would take them, once they were discharged, more than 6 months to get a VA claim or file for a disability, or those that even retiring from the military because of the backlog. And the military was not prepared. So what the military did, with each branch of service, they set up a special processing place, but began, to help expedite these claims. But because it was so busy, they were 6 months behind, and we get phone calls from veterans. I got to get my benefits. And so I talked to Senator Rockefeller about some of the ideas that we had. So one of them that we did to speed that up was when a person was discharged, they'd be given a DVD of their medical records plus their military medical records. And then we could work with the Defense Finance and Accounting Service to get their retirement benefits. So we sped that up. And even with black lung, because of my experiences listening to people complain, I would make suggestions to Senator Rockefeller, and some of those suggestions were passed into law or have regulations changed. And right now, the issue with veterans is still PTSD and veteran suicide. Something else that I did, I told you I was dating a lady who was a suicide prevention coordinator for the VA. So one of the things that she had to do was, report every time a veteran committed suicide. Unfortunately, a lot of veterans were not part of the VA system. Like me, I never really wanted to go to the VA to get my medical care. So if something would happen to me and I'm not in the VA system, there would be no record that someone committed suicide. So I talked to a legislator in Charleston, and so they worked with the medical examiner's office and got a law passed that when a person dies, and if they're a veteran, the medical examiner's office or the Department of Vital Statistics would report that to the VA so that we would know more about, when a veteran commits suicide. So veteran suicide, PTSD is something that still needs to be worked on. And those other things that veterans, and I work closely with veterans groups, and I've been, when I campaigned, they are supporting me. And
another factor and I think it kind of coincides with each other, but is good paying jobs and childcare. We've got situations now, there's jobs out there, but people can't afford to take them because they don't pay enough so they can pay for child.
See, that is something that, how is West Virginia going to grow and take advantage of jobs that are available? We always hear in the paper, or, well, we got a job, but we can't get anyone to take it. Well, unfortunately, parents don't have anyone at home because both parents work nowadays. And you can't leave everyone with grandma. It's not, we have extended families. That's one of the best things about West Virginia. But no telling how far away grandma's house is. And you can't burden grandma because they have a life of their own. So that is something that's very, very important to me. And I would like to, especially with people, and it sounds like it's a socialist welfare program, but if you think of VA benefits, you think of Medicare, Social Security, you take black lung benefits. Those are all social programs to help people. And I think if we could do something to give a boost, a shot in the arm to help young parents with childcare, and especially dependable child care centers, then we could have more people available for the labor market.
Now, one of the factors that I'm interested in especially is education. I'm a former educator, and our state, our test scores are still too low.
Right.
It was just in the newspaper today. Hoppy Kirchhoff had written a column about the chronic absenteeism.
Yes, that's a fact.
And now we're going more towards spending money towards charter schools, homebound education, which they're not being held accountable for.
Exactly. That's what the problem is.
And I know you're a big proponent of the STEM program.
Yes.
And that's science, technology, engineering, and math.
Plus A for the arts, STEAM. I've talked to certain teachers and they tell me STEAM.
There you go. Any ideas how to improve this? And we don't have enough teachers.
Exactly. And you can't blame the teachers because a lot of their students come from dysfunctional families. Then we have the drug problem that the parents of the students have. And a lot of these kids can't go home. They are more worried about where they're going to spend the night or where they're going to get their next meal. And truancy is such a severe problem. I hope the legislature will pass state laws enforcing or doing something about truancy to make sure kids stay in school. And education, let me just tell you this little story. I can tell you stories all day long. Senator Rockefeller was trying to get an airplane manufacturer to come here to West Virginia. It was called Swearingen, and it was making private airplanes much like Lear jets. And so we had a little ceremony, and the president was a Taiwanese guy. And he made a statement. At that time, Manchin was governor and Rockefeller was senator, and we was at Yeager Airport and, doing the announcement. And this president said that, it will not be successful in West Virginia because our people are not well enough educated. And they got all upset. But when you think about it, another thing that I did when I worked for Senator Rockefeller, I interviewed applicants to military academies. And so one of the first kids I interviewed, I won't say what county he was from, but he was a 4.0 student, captain of the football team, quarterback. And I thought, West Point's going to want him. Then you look at his SATs and ACT scores. They were way down in the basement. He had no chance of competing in a military academy, especially when kids come from better schools. And I went to church school. And sometimes I feel, because of going to church school, I received a good education. But after I got out of school and entered the military, there are so many things that I did not know that I was naive about. And in a public school, you have teachers, a larger collection of teachers and more students, and you learn a lot more. You have a wider variety of educational opportunities other than just a few teachers that are in that church school. Now, homeschooling, I've seen good and bad. There was a young girl. She she was homeschooled, but her parents were well educated, and they rounded out her education. And we got her nominated to the U.S. Naval Academy. She was an outstanding person. So, again, there are certain people that should be allowed to be homeschooled. But but certain people, I think the parents really don't provide them with the education or the study materials that they need. And we need to support our public schools with some of this money these people get, especially in border counties. They go across the river and go to another school, and that's draining the finances from our schools. We must do everything to support our public schools. And we must think about our education system. We were talking about STEM or STEAM. There's very, very few schools in West Virginia that offer STEM education. And if you want to excite, kids, they want to learn. They don't want to be dummies. And, regardless, if you don't provide them with a good education, they're going to get in mischief because they're not challenged. We need to challenge our young people. And by using the STEM or STEAM program, we could get them involved in so many things and create their ability to learn, much like Homer Hickam down in McDowell County. That's when they started the Sputnik program. He was a keen observer and wanted to learn about rocketry. Fortunately, he had a teacher that got him excited to want to learn about rocketry. And then, he went to go on to work for NASA. He realized, and the teacher impressed upon him, that I'm not knocking coal miners, don't get me wrong, but there's other opportunities available. And especially with children in our rural areas, they see no hope. They see no opportunities for improvement or a job. So they might not want to go to school. What difference does it make? I'll just get a check. We have to change that attitude by exciting our young people to want to learn. Then economic opportunities will come in when outside businesses are interested.
I agree. This can be a touchy subject. What about abortion? How do you feel about abortion?
Well, you have to remember, I went to church, and went to a church school. And initially, I thought, no, that's wrong. That's murder. But then after the Supreme Court decision to limit, and then they put it back to states' rights, some of the states' legislatures have passed such restrictive laws that even if a woman wants a D&C, that's considered an abortion, because of those procedures. And so many doctors don't even want to do that anymore. And then you look at just the other day, there was someone doing a television program, and he was making fun. Well, how many women does this really affect? Within the half hour, he received 14,000 examples of why abortion laws should not be so restrictive. And as we know, ex-President Trump was talking about even West Virginia. People get abortions in 9 months, and then here in West Virginia, we murder children after they're born. And no woman, unless it's a medical life-saving procedure, would want to have an abortion like that. And we read so many examples of women having a dead fetus within their bodies and can't get it taken care of. Or we learn about rapes of young children. A little girl, 10 years old in Ohio, was raped. And why should a little 10-year-old, you think, well, save the baby? But what about the mother? Or what about saving the life of the mother? We have to think about things like that. So because we've seen things go such the opposite way, the way that I feel abortion should be between a woman and her doctor, not the government. What is, like gun rights. Well, the government's going to come in and take your gun. Well, if they feel that way, then why shouldn't they not feel the same way? Well, the government's wanting to murder your wife.
You have been endorsed by several different groups. Of course, Jay Rockefeller.
Oh, definitely. That's what I'm most proud of.
AFL-CIO, the United Mine Workers, the United Steel Workers, the West Virginia Working Families, Communication Workers. West Virginia Can't Wait. What is that?
Well, West Virginia Can't Wait is a group. They were dissatisfied with the way, with the two-party system, and they wanted to have more local involvement of not hand-picked candidates who had money, but they wanted to support candidates who wanted to go out and make a difference to represent the people instead of a party or a corporation.
Now, why as an independent, most of those endorsements would have normally, back in the old days, endorsed the Democrats.
That's correct.
The working man. Why, as an independent, how come you chose that route? Exactly.
Well, I didn't want to be under the control of either party. I wanted to be my own man. And a lot of times, just like what's going on in Congress now, for the last several years, Congress has not passed any meaningful legislation. And because they're all caught up in party politics. And just, this past year alone, how many congressmen, and I'll just say Republican congressmen, dropped out, said they're no longer running, not because they were being challenged. They are dropping out because they felt they couldn't do their job effectively. And that's why they went to Washington. They wanted to do things for the country instead of getting caught up in partisan politics. So with me, I'll be an independent. I don't have to be under the thumb of any political party. My goal is to represent West Virginians. And one of the main things that I want to do as a result of the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, there's basket loads of millions and millions of dollars that are waiting there for communities or whoever to apply for those. I want to go to Washington to work on getting grants, working with the Hive program here in the Beckley area, or the New River I can't think of the full acronym, but I want to help them and communities like those through rural West Virginia and we just read this past weekend about Webster County. People have given up hope. Everyone's moving away. It's just like with Richwood after the flood. People moved away. We have to rebuild those communities, put back infrastructure, bring back certain programs, set up rural health clinics so people don't have to drive to Charleston or to Beckley if you're in a rural area. Those are the things that I'm interested in. And I don't want, there's certain legislation that I would have to vote on and support. But my primary purpose is let's represent West Virginians. That's all I care about. That's why I'm running. Years ago, when we used to have the major floods down in McDowell County, Mingo County, Wyoming County, Logan County, I represented Senator Rockefeller. I worked with flood victims, either getting a bridge replaced or working with FEMA, SBA, or trying to get housing. Seeing their needs so much, you just think back the past century, the billions of dollars that have come out of those communities, and now they're ghost towns. They're forsaken. It shouldn't be that way. As I mentioned, I'm a 10th generation West Virginian. I bleed West Virginia. I care for West Virginia. That's my sole purpose in running, is to get, you Charleston, Huntington, those areas are doing well. But the eastern side of the state, they need an economic shot in the arm, not necessarily a giveaway program, but be given the ability to raise up their standard of living. That's what I want to do.
And you could be at the beach with your feet in the water and retired,
right? Exactly.
But you're attacking the and that's now. How about people want to learn more about your platform? You have a website.
Yes, I have a website. It's wes4wv.com. And I would suggest, everyone go there and take a look. You can learn a lot about me, or listen to this podcast and learn a few other little things that I didn't necessarily put out there. So
you also have a Facebook page.
Yes, I have a Facebook, and it's also West for West Virginia.
You're a great example of the type of people we need in Congress.
Well, thank you.
And I look forward to. Of course, time is becoming short.
Mm-hmm.
Now you will be on the ballot.
Yes, I will be on the ballot.
So they don't have to write anything in or
nothing,
anything like that. Look for you there. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, one thing I would like to say, before my wife was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, and we was winding down, Senator Rockefeller's office was winding down. And I remember being asked, well, what are you going to do? I said, whoever is re-elected, I'll come work for them for free because I like helping people. I like solving problems. And again, when I worked for Senator Rockefeller, many of the problems that I was given, they were not, like a textbook example, XYZ. We didn't have Google. We didn't have internet. You had to think by the seat of your pants to solve problems. And I love that challenge. The more difficult it was, the more I loved it. And I remember, sometimes people ask me, well, how do you know to do what you do? I said, I don't know till I get in there and tried. But one thing, when my wife was living, she always made sure, she said, God is using you to help people. And that's the way my whole life has been. I have a very, even just being in church this past Sunday and listening to the preachers, I can feel God talking to me. So,
Wes Holden, that's quite a testimony. And we thank you for taking the time and coming to talk with us.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome to come back anytime you want.
Pretty well. You better schedule me. And again, as we were talking, I feel like I'm a history book. I've seen and experienced so much. We could talk about whatever topic, much like we were talking about Ken Heckler, or during this podcast, I can tell you stories about Senator Byrd or Dr. Toyota. I tell you stories about meeting different presidents or different very important people during my career and just talking to them. And one of the things that I learned is they were all just common everyday people. The people that, the famous people that I met, they were just common people. There was no airs of, I'll kiss my ring or whatever.
Well, that's why you need to come back sometime.
Okay.
And anybody else out there that would like to be on our program, you can contact me at awbennett50@gmail.com, and we'll get you on here. And remember, until next time, if you're not dead yet, you're not done yet. And this is Wayne Bennett, and God bless you.